What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders. Happy to be with you for another week of golf, coming off a really fun tournament last week in Scotland. Of course, the tee times got moved up there on the weekend with the high winds. Would have been really interesting to see if they would have tried to play that final round on Sunday in the teeth of that Sunday afternoon wind, but they did move it up. And Rory McIlroy, incredible, birdieing 17 and 18 to win the tournament by one stroke. Only a handful of birdies on those holes throughout the day. And for him to birdie both of them and win the tournament will pretty much put the lid on everyone who had been saying, you know, he's having trouble closing out golf tournaments. So we'll recap that really quick here. But we've also got a busy week in store with the Open Championship. Another major this week, and we want to make sure we devote plenty of time to breaking that down. So to help do that, I've got two co-hosts with me tonight. We've got Matt Vincenzi back with us this week. He was on a few weeks ago and did a great job, so happy to bring him back for a major. Matt, how you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm excited to be back. Had a lot of fun last time, and this one will be even better because it's a major, and you can't beat that.
Absolutely. We look forward to breaking it down here. And of course, as usual, we've got Mr. Derek Farnsworth, aka Notorious, alongside as well. Noto, how you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Didn't catch a bunch of the Scottish Open, but ended up watching that Rory shot like everyone else, like 100 times on Twitter afterwards. Fun event. And the Barbasol was pretty fun too. I had more of a sweat over there with Vincent Norman. So that was a lot of fun. I can't believe his putt dropped on 18. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that, but yeah, that was the full 360. It looked like he was going to miss, and then he won in the playoff. And yeah, we got to hear your bad beat story on McIntyre, Justin.
It wasn't a very large bet, so that's the good news. But before the tournament, I put a little bit on McIntyre to win the tournament. We talked about him. Both Noto and I think, kind of gushed about him on last week's show, so that was a good call. And McIntyre, you know, the hometown guy there, the whole crowd rooting for him, and made a huge run there on the weekend. And with the tee times getting moved up so early, and really, you know, the bet was of a size that I probably wouldn't have hedged it out regardless. But when he had that huge shot on 18 and ended up, you know, getting in the clubhouse lead there. And then McIlroy goes and birdies 17 and 18. And I just kind of chuckled that, you know, this is the one time that Rory gets it done is when it hurts a little bit. But yeah, if anybody had a McIntyre win ticket, hopefully you got a little bit on Rory as well to make that payoff. But, you know, thankfully we weren't talking, you know, five figures here for me or anything. So, which is good, because if it would have been a bigger bet, I would have been A, more angry, and B, I don't think the Sunday MLB content that I was doing while the tournament was wrapping up would have got done on time. So, yeah, that was it. But good for Rory, but I really wish Bobby Mack would have won because I like him too. All right. Well, let's any other takeaways? Obviously, we've talked about Rory. We talked about Bobby Mack. We had, you know, a pretty star-studded leaderboard last week. No surprise with a lot of the big names making the trip over. So we had Scheffler, despite an off week, still finishing in a tie for third. You had Hatton up there. He was in the mix. Tommy Fleetwood, who I know Noto was rooting for, just couldn't make any birdies on Sunday. Tom Kim was up there as well. And a big finish for David Lingmerth, his first showing of any significance in quite a while, and that's gotten him into this week's field. Benny On also qualifying for the Open with a T3 finish. But Matt, any other takeaways from last week's event from your angles?
Yeah, like Noto, he was on the pre-tournament for Fleetwood. I got on it 130 to 1 in the middle of round one. So I was sweating that one out. I hit it pretty big too, because I really liked him pre-tournament, you know, for all the reasons that Noto did. But I had Hatton, and I just feel like I couldn't pull on both guys at that price. So I was waiting to see if I could get something live, and I did, which made it hurt when he didn't play that well on Sunday. I actually thought he was in a really good position to win, because all the pressure was on Rory. He was a couple back, but still in the final group. So him and Hatton, I really thought I had. You know, someone sent me a screenshot at one point. I think on the 12th or 13th hole, Hatton was the favorite and Fleetwood was the second favorite. So didn't work out there. And then I was on Glover and Murray at the Barbasol, so I'm not lucky there either. So yeah, oh well.
You're due.
Yeah.
Fleet, and it was pretty impressive that Fleetwood was still kind of in the mix, because I believe he started his round with 11 or 12 straight pars. And, he was still right there before he kind of went sideways a little bit for a couple holes, but just couldn't make any birdies and ended up finishing just a few shots back there. But a solid week for a lot of those guys. Noto, anything else that you took away from last week? I know there were quite a few chalky guys. You look at all the names that finished just outside the cut line. Patrick Cantlay was one shot away. Aberg was one shot away. Adam Scott was one shot away. Keith Mitchell missed the cut by one. Justin Rose was a couple shots outside the cut line. Sung Jae, a couple shots outside the cut line. So, yeah, a few shots here or there might have really swayed the cut, made cut percentages for DFS last week. So, yeah, it was a really interesting week. Pretty low 6-6 percentage.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just rattled off my main lineup in DFS right there with all those missed cuts. It was pretty rough, but one other point on DFS is a lot of the cheaper DP World Tour guys ended up playing well, and I think we're going to see that again this week. And then one other note, Steph Curry got the hole-in-one and then hit that putt to win the celebrity.
That's not fair. He should not be allowed to.
That guy's too good at everything.
We were on. Not to sidetrack the show, but I was on XM with Dean when Curry made that hole-in-one, and so I looked at the leaderboard of that. It was a celebrity, just a 2-round celebrity event. So I picked like 4 names from the top 10 and 4 names from the bottom 10, and I made Dean guess whether that was a good celebrity golfer or a bad celebrity golfer, and I think he got exactly half of them right and half of them wrong. So that was a fun little game we played. But it's really weird. You think some of these guys, like, how can this guy be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL and he's finishing below Charles Barkley in the celebrity golf tournament? But anyway, those things are pretty cool. But it's not fair how good Curry is. Like, leave one sport for somebody else, because he's played in a few like Corn Ferry events too, right?
I think so, yeah.
Crazy. Well, that was last week. We can probably go ahead and move on. Obviously, we've got a lot to talk about this week with the Open Championship. A little bit different pricing on DraftKings this week too. We've got golfers in the 5Ks on DraftKings this week for, I believe, the first time ever. So they've widened the salary range a little bit more. Not that anybody really down there is somebody you want to be playing, but maybe it starts to lead us towards a little bit more value. Maybe we start to see the Stars and Scrubs builds become a little more popular, depending on how they treat this in future weeks, and if it's not just kind of a one-off sort of deal. But we've got the Open Championship, if you're not familiar, is always contested on a different course. So they've got a rotation of courses that they go through. And this year's will be at Royal Liverpool, which last hosted the event in 2014 and then in 2006. And I believe that Rory and Tiger are the last 2 winners here, if I'm not mistaken. So pulled up the 2014 leaderboard here just now. Obviously, that's almost a decade ago, so a lot of guys aren't going to have history. But Rory, Ricky Fowler, Sergio Garcia, Jim Furyk, Mark Leishman, Adam Scott were your top 6 back in 2014. Noto, what do you think about the course and the event in general, and maybe this new pricing on DraftKings?
Yeah, I mean, you win this week, and you're going to be included with some the golfing greats. Tiger, Rory, Walter Hagen, Bobby Jones have all won here, so should be a fun week. It's typically been a little bit easier than most of the other courses on the Open Rota. It's par 71 now. It did play as a par 72 the last 2 times we saw it. 7,383 yards. New 17th hole. Par 3 is going to be in play this time. And basically the story of the week is you're going to want to hit the fairways. They aren't, particularly narrow, about 32 yards wide. But after that, you have a couple yards of rough and then some really high fescue. And out of bounds is going to be in play in 6 of the 18 holes. I don't know if you guys saw today, but on 18, out of bounds is like 6 yards away from the fairway. So going to see a lot of drama there on the finishing hole. The green's 6,500 square feet, so a little bit smaller than tour average. Feature bent grass and fescue. And yeah, I mean, links experience, Open Championship experience. I do think it might play a little bit easier. There is a lot of rain in the forecast, so we'll see if the wind picks up. Like we saw last week, and we were expecting some huge winds, and then they came at some time. They went away at other times. So just be aware of that. Check the wind right before lineup lock, because we could see a potential wave advantage. I'm going to be stacking both sides, even if it does look like one side's going to be better than the other. Then my other point, you mentioned the pricing. Yeah, there's some 5K guys that look pretty appealing this week, and then the ceiling also was raised by DraftKings 12.5 for the most expensive guys. So a lot more lineup decisions to make this week, and yeah, I'm excited.
And the other thing about the tee times for this is that they tend to be spread out a little bit more than your other events, because I don't think they're out yet, but most of the time, in the absence of really strange weather conditions, I believe most of the Open Championship venues send everybody off the first tee, which tends to spread out the tee times a little bit more. And with the weather being unpredictable, a lot of times there could be maybe just a 2-hour block of tee times that end up with the best advantage. And that was, my biggest score ever in DFS was at this tournament one time, stacking together guys that were teeing off within a similar range that ended up having by far the best scoring conditions for the first couple of rounds. So, and the forecast can change on a dime. So like Noto mentioned, stacking up different spots of the draw, even if the forecast maybe looks slightly different on the surface, is certainly something that you can consider. Matt, what do you think about the course and tournament in general this week?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that finishing stretch, you talked about 18 being pretty interesting with that out of bounds right there to the right. There's also like a TIO area where I know typically guys will kind of fire at that and get a nice drop. But here at the Open, they usually do it differently. They give you a drop area from that, so you're not going to get as favorable as the spot. And 17, there are a lot of comments today. Billy Foster, I just finished writing a story about this. Billy Foster was talking about, he's Matt Fitzpatrick's caddy, talking about 17 and how it's basically unfair. It's a small green. It's only 150 yards, but it's most likely going to play into the wind. And if you're taking, like we saw Rory on 18, taking a 2-iron into a kind of a relatively short shot, and then it really filters off, and the bunkers are really, really hard on 17. So a lot of negative feedback on that hole so far. So I think the 17-18 finish is going to be pretty wild. Yeah,
for sure. It was really, really interesting seeing that where that out of bounds is on 18. I think there's going to be help us all if Hatton hits it there. Will be what happens, I guess, or maybe it's good theater if that happens. But will be a really interesting finishing stretch. That's getting a lot of the press here today. I think Michael Kim tweeted out earlier. He's always posting his thoughts on the course. That he played the back nine today. The back nine will be played into the wind for the most part. And, especially with some rain and the course maybe not being as firm and fast as you would expect for a links course, I think is going to have a lot more people emphasizing driving this week than maybe you otherwise would have, all things being equal. So anyway, we should get to the breakdown here. It looks like our projections really have it pegged as a event where it's going to be difficult to score. Obviously, that's somewhat dependent on the weather, but our projections have the highest score at 40 fantasy points right now, which that seems. I mean, Noto, does that seem low to you?
What was it you say?
The highest fantasy point projection that we have right now is like 40.
That might be, I think that's leftover from the showdown last week. I don't think the projections are up yet.
Got it. Well, that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. Now I feel a little better. I'm like, wow, that's
real low. When he scored 15 over par.
We got 50 mile an hour winds here this week. All right. So take the projections with a grain of salt. If we still got last week's numbers in there in terms of the fantasy point numbers. So it will be difficult to score regardless, but For those that I'm not sure if okay, Steve doesn't have it up on the screen share right now, but let's go ahead and start with the top of the group here. And Noto, you mentioned the 12.5 salary tag there at the top for Scheffler, who obviously deserves to be the most expensive golfer in the field based on the way that he's been playing over the course of this entire season. Hasn't missed a cut, hasn't really finished outside the top 15. You've got last week's winner and the 2014 winner on this course in Rory. And then we've got Rahm, we've got Cam Smith, we've got Brooks Koepka, and we've got Hovland and Schauffele also above 10K. So we've got 7 options up in that top 5-figure tier on DraftKings this week. Matt, I'll let you have the first crack. How are you handling this top range this week?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they didn't make it easy with the pricing here. Scheffler and Rory are both really hard to ignore for me. Scotty, just his floor is so insanely high, unlike anything I've really ever seen. So it's hard to get away from him, but that price is prohibitive. So I'm glad that DraftKings made that the price. And then Rory, I mean, he has the course form, he has the current form. He obviously was great on Sunday. For me, it's going to come down to ownership. And Noto, I did want to ask you this because I'm seeing early projections here of Rory at like 18 to 20%. I just can't imagine it'll be that low.
Yeah, I was kind of seeing the same thing. I was thinking he's going to be the highest home guy above 10K. So I'm right there with you, although it seems like a lot of steam in the betting markets coming in on Scheffler. He was 10-1 yesterday morning. He was 9-1 last night. And now best you can get him is like 750. So maybe everyone's kind of following the betting market, and there's more steam coming in on Scheffler as well. It's really hard to find a problem with either one of those guys.
Yeah, they're definitely the top 2 there for sure. It'll be really interesting to see how ownership ends up shaking out, or whether they kind of end up, in the same ballpark. Like if one is significantly higher owned than the other, then give me the lower owned guy. I don't care which one it is.
That's where I'm at too. And
go ahead.
And for me, I'd probably lean Rory over Scheffler. It seems like, I mean, the numbers that I'm seeing, I don't think are completely way off base. It seems like Scheffler's going to be higher owned, and has that $600 price increase. So if that's the case, I'll play Rory. Is there any possible scenario where you could see not playing either of these guys?
Go ahead, Noto. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the balance build certainly looks a lot better on paper. You don't have to dip into the 6Ks, the 5Ks. So if the winner comes, from that 9K range, then I could certainly see it being possible. But it's hard to see them, not being one of the two being in the mix at least.
Yeah, with the way that Scheffler's just form. We talk about how long it's been since he's finished outside the top 15. It's been April 13th since he finished outside the top 5 in any event, which is crazy. The tee to green game, obviously on point. And Rory has not finished outside the top 10 since May 4th. So, those two guys seem to be separating themselves from the rest of the pack. And I think it's going to lead to a lot of people thinking, hey, if I'm going up here, I might as well get one of those two. Or taking the Noto approach of, well, the balance build seems to make a little bit of sense. Noto, is that going to have like the whole world running away from Rahm and Smith and Koepka and Schauffele? Are these guys going to end up being lower owned simply because people are going balanced, or they're playing Scheffler or Rory?
Yeah, it does feel like that next range is going to be a little under owned, just because most guys are going to start with Scheffler or Rory, and then from that point you can't really fit anyone else above 10K unless you really dip into the value guys. So I do think we're going to see some lower ownership, especially on Rahm. He hasn't played much. I missed the cut at the Travelers his last time out. Before that, he didn't play great at the U.S. Open. So I think Rahm's probably going to be really low owned. Cam Smith, everyone's going to be worried about the accuracy off the tee. I've already heard that narrative spit out a bunch. I like him quite a bit. Best short game on tour maybe. And then obviously got the good iron play as well. Won the Open last year. Brooks and Major is always interesting. Xander is the model favorite. Anytime you run any kind of model, he's going to pop up there. He's actually third in my model this week, but we know he's not going to win. At least we don't think he's going to win. So, yeah, I don't know. My favorite other than the top 2 is going to be Hovland. He's been playing great all year. He won the Memorial, his biggest win of his career thus far. He's been great at the Open. He's been great on links courses. So I really like Hovland. I don't know if you compare him with Rory or Scheffler, but I'm certainly going to try in some lineups.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how all this plays out at the top. I've always kind of been underweight on Cam Smith for the most part. Even when he was playing on the PGA Tour full time, and just finds ways to contend. And and this is a week where certainly creativity could end up paying off. So don't mind rolling with him in some tournament builds. Matt, any other thoughts on this top tier for you?
Yeah, I'm going to play a lot of Hovland. He's my pick to win, and I really feel pretty good about it. I like mostly the fact that he has now developed that necessary scar tissue that it takes to win majors, right? He was in the final group at St. Andrews, and then at the Masters, he was in the second to last group, and then at the PGA Championship, in the final group with Brooks. And then that one, he actually showed that he could play well, and if Brooks didn't exist, he would have won the tournament. I think he was good enough to win. He gets caught in that bunker, but he still shoots 68. So I'm just really impressed with the way he's developed and the way he's playing in majors now. And I think this might be the first of many for him. So I'm definitely playing him. I won't be playing Xander. I agree on Cam. I like Cam. I don't care driving accuracy or not. He can win any course in the world. He's that great. So I will try to look to get those guys in. But with this Scheffler-McIlroy dilemma, it just makes everything tough. Like, you can't play all four of those guys. So it's going to be some tough decisions to be made.
Absolutely. Part of the fun of DFS and narrowing down that player pool in your builds. And again, of course, keep an eye on where the ownership pulse heads as we get closer to tee time as well. And make sure you get those rosters set early. We'll have an early lock, around the changeover from Wednesday to Thursday. If you're on United States soil, it's going to be a 2 a.m. lock or something like that on the East Coast, and around midnight, around the mountain time zone. So just make sure you don't get stuck with a dummy lineup that you don't want. As we head into the 9K range, you've got Cantlay, who missed the cut on the number last week. Fowler coming off a win with a relatively kind of average T42 finish. Faded a bit on Sunday, maybe a little bit of fatigue there after a win and travel and all that stuff. But he's there in the 9K range. Jordan Spieth still struggling to find his form. Fitzpatrick, another guy that missed the cut last week. I didn't even mention him when I went through that list earlier. And then you got Hatton, Fleetwood, Lowry coming off strong performances last week. So you got quite a group of guys with good form and a few guys with maybe shakier form in this 9K range. And I will give the first pass at this group to you, Noto. What do you think?
Yeah, I do like the chalk in this range quite a bit. It's hard to ignore Hatton and Fleetwood. Both been great on links throughout their careers, both coming off of good finishes last week at the Scottish, and they've both been pretty good at the Open Championship. So in terms of high floors, it's hard to ignore those two. And for tournaments, Jordan Spieth, what are we doing with Jordan Spieth? I know Justin's not playing him because he never played him.
Just move that on to Matt.
And, well, I was looking at, Ron Claus, PJ Splits 101, friend of the show. I was looking at, he posts all the links rounds since 2014, I think. And Spieth's number one in strokes gained per round on links courses over the last 10 years. He's obviously got the great Open track record as well. So, Matt, any interest in Spieth at low ownership?
I don't think so. It's probably a smart game theory play. But for me, I went there last week, and maybe I'm still spurned by that. But I thought he played better last week, considering I think he finished 10th there last year. But it's either he's out of form or he's injured. And I don't know what the answer is, but regardless of which one it is, I'm going to be out.
Always liked him, man. I've always liked him.
I was on him last week, too.
Yeah, the last two links rounds, not good. So that's more important than the decade. Of course, it's the decade of links history. You got to go after the last two rounds. But he's not cheap. Like, it's not like he's priced down to Justin Thomas levels. And Spieth on the whole maybe hasn't been struggling as much as Thomas has. But it's not like he's been that far. That he hasn't been peppering the top of leaderboards. And I think he'll be higher owned than many people expect, especially in the lower dollar contest, just because you do tend to get maybe a few more casual users playing this week, and some of those guys will play Spieth. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth the trouble. So you can lock in the minus 1,000 bet of me not endorsing Spieth on the show. But anything else in this range for you, Noto? Anybody other than Spieth?
Yeah, I like Ricky Fowler. Finally got the win a few weeks ago. Played pretty well last week. We know he's been, good on this side of the pond throughout his career. And it just feels like, now that he got that win, something big might be coming. So I do like Ricky Fowler quite a bit at 9,800. He was the last guy that I left off my betting card this week.
All right, Matt, your thoughts on this $9,000 range here this week?
I'm with you, man. I love Ricky. I have 125 to 1 ticket from probably 6 months ago that I'm excited about.
I would take that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at these numbers, it's a little tougher to say whether I'd bet him or not. But I think you spoke about a high floor play with Fleetwood, and I agree with that. And I think Fowler's at other high floor play. Like winning would be tough, but I feel like he's close to a lock for a top 15. This week, and I could see him winning. I think for some guys who have just won recently, I sometimes look at that as a negative, but for him, I think it's a positive because I didn't think his first win was going to be a major. I think he needed to kind of break that seal first and then, gain that confidence back and then come into something big and win that. And why not a course that he finished second on in 2014, and he played really well that week. So I do like Fowler. I like Cantlay too. Famous last words. He's hurt me at times in the past in majors, but his last 5 majors he's finished in the top 16, which it sounds better than it actually is because he really hasn't contended or made any meaningful golf shots in those majors yet. But I just can't pass up the talent at what I think is somewhat of a discounted price. I don't care about the miscut of the Scottish. So I'm going to be playing Cantlay. And I think if you start Hovland Cantlay, then all of a sudden, it's you're fading those top 2 guys, but you still have a lot of, I think, some win equity there, and then that high end talent. I like Ricky. Fleetwood is a really high floor, but can he win? I'm not sure about that. I'm a little higher on Fleetwood than Hatton this week. And then at the bottom of the nines, I'm going to be playing a lot of DJ. I love DJ this week. I bet him at 35 to 1. He's been getting better progressively. I think he had a really slow start to the season because I don't think he did much in the offseason. I'm sure he'd be the first one to tell you that, but he gained 11.4 strokes tee to green at the U.S. Open, which was 5th in the field, and then he's played well in the last 2 starts on Live. He's a great Open Championship record, which might be a little bit surprising to people because it doesn't seem like he would, but he's been great. He shot 65 here in 2014, which was the low round of the entire week. So I think there's a lot of reason to go to him at that cheap of a price.
Yeah, certainly some interesting ways to go in this range, and I'm with you guys on the Cantlay call. I think Fleetwood, I'm maybe a little bit higher on him than some people are this week. I mean, I think everybody seems to think that he's a high floor play. I think he's just had some bad luck coming down the end of some of these tournaments. I mean, if you replayed the tournament from a few weeks ago, 25 times, he's going to win that probably more than half the time. With the way that I guess that was about 5 weeks ago now. He was T5 at the U.S. Open. Obviously, was in the mix with 5 holes to go last week. So I think eventually he gets there, and I'm okay with him even at 9,300 this week also. So, Noto, any other thoughts on the 9K range before we move on?
Funny Walls in the chat. Cameron Young season. I mean, nobody's going to play him. I was surprised to see him kind of fall apart. Where was it? The John Deere on the weekend. But man, it's hard to see him playing well.
Couldn't handle that weekend pressure at the John Deere.
And the driver's his best weapon. A lot of people are saying you're going to hit a lot of 2 irons. Tiger famously only hit 1 driver the week that he won. Rory, I think he said he hit more 2 irons than drivers the week he won. So hard for me to see Cam Young. And then this has nothing to do with DFS, but Matt, I saw your tweet this morning about cayenne pepper. I'm always looking for new ways to get some more energy. What do you do with this cayenne pepper?
Yeah, so what I do is put a little bit of water in a cup. I just sprinkle a good amount in. I can handle a lot. You can start with whatever you want. Swish it around, knock it back. It's really good for a lot of different things. It's a blood stimulant. It can like heal up even if you put it on a wound on the outside, like on your skin, it'll like close it directly up. It does the same thing on the inside of your body. Gets the blood moving around, makes the blood more effective. Just like a stimulant would be for your brain, blood it's a stimulant for your blood. So it helps the digestion. There's a lot of other helps with migraines. Helps with joint pain. It's kind of like a miracle drug. Or miracle herb. Sorry, not a drug. It's better than taking drugs, and that's kind of, I think, what the pharmaceutical companies would rather you not know.
All right, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'll let you know how it goes.
Good.
We have solved all the world's problems here on the air tonight. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move on to the 8K range. Where you still these are the players. This range could make or break a lineup, I think, this week because the stars and scrubs builds will be somewhat popular, but the balanced builds are probably going to have a couple of guys in here, and these are most of the guys so far. Either you can't poke more than one or two holes in the game, or you basically just debate how much win equity they have. This range, you start to get to the volatile golfers that we know. We've seen upside from them in the past, but they've been a little bit more inconsistent. Matsuyama, Wyndham Clark, Justin Thomas having his worst year since he came on the PGA Tour full time. Sung J M has been down a little bit more of late. Tony Finau has been a little more up and down. Homa, we know, has been up and down, and well-chronicled lack of success in major championships. So anything in this kind of middle tier, Matt, that stands out to you at first glance this week?
It's tough. I don't really like the range that much at all, which I'm sure we're not going to be alone on, which makes it, like you said, really important. I'm going to play Bryson. I think his form is better than many people would believe. The 4th of the PGA, the 20th at the U.S. Open, where he was in the mix for a lot of it before the weekend. And I just think lately, I mean, he almost was second at Valderrama, which is a course that really shouldn't suit him. And then in London, he made a late charge before he had to take a penalty stroke. But I think he is kind of going to go under the radar in terms of ownership. And he's been in the mix at the last two majors. And he's, when you think of Bryson, you don't think of an Open Championship, but this course might suit him better than you'd think because, one, it's really flat, which I think helps with his yardages. And also, I like that, in 2019, Bryson, who he said he's trying to be, this is a course you would think it really would make sense for. So, yeah, I'm going to play a lot of Bryson.
Got to ask him what he thinks the par is on the course and then adjust accordingly. Noto, your thoughts on the 8K range here?
Yeah, like you guys, it's a really ugly range. I think if you played like 12% of everyone, you'd probably be overweight on most of them. So that's at least an interesting angle to take in MME. Just play the guys that nobody else wants to, that at least have some talent. But in terms of the guys that I do like, I like Tony Finau a little bit. I know he's been in bad form, but if you look at, he's 6th in strokes gained tee to green in this field since January 1st. It's mostly been the putter that's been holding him back. Look at his Open Championship track record, T28 or better in 5 straight years. So I think he's interesting at 82. And then I'll play some Justin Rose at 8,000. Did burn me a little bit last week, but he finished T23 here in 2014. Another guy that seems to play well at the Open each year.
All right. Agree pretty much on the thoughts here that there's not a whole lot of high ownership in this range. Like Noto, I'm kind of a Finau fan. So playing him at 8,200 while he's not massive chalk is something that I think I'll be doing a little bit of this week as well. All right, Noto, I'll stick with you as we go into the 7K range, 7,500 to 7,900. Lots of guys that really aren't going to project a whole lot different than the 8K range above them. We know last week notwithstanding, Adam Scott's had a pretty good year. Jason Day, haven't seen him as much lately, but he's had a solid year. Gooch has been playing well on the Live Tour. You've got Connors, Minwoo Lee. Patrick Reed obviously has major championship history, so no strangers to top level golf in this 7K range. You got a favorite or two in there?
Yeah, this is going to be, a course that rewards guys that hit the 2-iron well. Got to like Minwoo Lee. We saw him at the Players Championship. He was hitting at 290 and straight. So I think he's interesting. He's coming off of 6 straight top 40s, finished T21 at the Open last year. So I like him at 7,700. And then love Patrick Reed. He's made the cut at all the majors so far this season. He's a guy that nobody likes to play, so his ownership always comes in lower than it should. He's been playing pretty well on Live, too. He's coming off of a 5th and 2nd place finish. So those are my 2 favorite in the range. I don't mind Adam Scott. Don't mind Corey Connors. I think they're kind of high floor plays there.
All right, Matt, what do you like in here?
I love Adam Scott. I think some people will be turned off because he missed the cut last week, but he shot 67 in the second round and missed it on the number. So I'm actually completely fine with that. I know his coach recently said that he thinks he's in a great spot. Everything he does is geared towards attempting to win that second major and, for his legacy and his career. So I think if there's a place where he can contend, it can definitely be here. Was great here in 2014. Yeah, at that time he was the #1 player in the world. So it's not shocking that he played well, but the course still has to set up and suit him pretty well. And I think less than driver might actually be good for him because when he gets in trouble, he kind of sprays the driver a little bit. But I think it's a great Adam Scott course, one of the best Open Championship histories out of any player in the field. So 6 of his last 7, I think, in the top 20 in the Open. So I like him a lot. I like Reed too. And who else here? Connors I like a lot, but I have a feeling he's going to be mega chalk, so I'm probably going to avoid.
Yeah, it seems like that's been the case with a lot of the majors this year based on the pricing. I'll keep a close eye once we get our ownership projections finalized, but you have to think that he'll be pretty popular. Neiman, another interesting guy, I think, in terms of risk reward potential in this range. It sort of depends on what you think. I'm of the opinion, and I think we'll see a few more drivers this week. We'll have to see how the quotes come out over the next couple of days and what the weather forecast ends up being. But hopefully, with a little bit more rain, I think we'll maybe see guys take bigger clubs off the tee more so than the last time the Open was played here. All right, as we move down to the lower end of the 7K range, you got Ryan Fox, my guy that I play a lot in this range. He had a decent week last week, didn't play super well on Sunday, but still a solid overall week. We've got Brian Harmon, Denny McCarthy, Moronk missed the cut on the number last week. A lot of guys that maybe we're used to playing from the PGA Tour side that are going to seem slightly underpriced, but you get to guys that maybe don't have as much experience on links down here, or you've got more of the European guys like Thomas Peters and Alex Noren down here as well. Matt, I'll give you the first crack at the bottom end of the 7K range. What do you like in here?
Yeah, at the bottom, McCarthy is interesting. He's been playing some really good golf, and he should suit this course pretty well. Power had a good start. I don't know if it's sustainable or not. I looked at Harris English a bit, but his Open Championship kind of turns me off. Henley does feel like a safer option and can do definitely what the course is asking of him. So those are the kind of the guys that I think I would play.
All right, Noto, your thoughts on this range?
Yeah, somebody pointed this to me out today on Twitter that Russell Henley, I mean, he's got the perfect game for links courses. He hits fairways. He's great with his irons, pretty decent on and around the greens. And for whatever reason, he's been terrible on links courses, like might be the worst in the field, at least like of the guys that have enough rounds. So that's interesting to me. He has been playing great, so we'll see how he plays. Brian Harmon at 14% feels really gross. I think he might end up being the guy that everyone talks up as the fade due to ownership on Monday. And then by the time, lineup lock rolls around, hopefully he's going to be a little bit low owned. So I don't know what to do there. I do like Denny McCarthy. He hasn't played a ton of links golf, but you talk about a guy that hits fairways, makes putts. And like Josh said in the chat, his box score is just, it's awesome. I mean, he's been a top 10 machine all season. He talks about liking difficult courses. And then I do like Adrian Moronk. He's number 1 in strokes gained total on the DP World Tour this season. And other than the miscut last week, he's been playing great. So those are the guys that I like in the 7Ks. But there's a lot of good names here. Alex Noren's been playing a lot better recently, other than last week, of course. Chris Kirk, I think he sets up pretty well with his skill set for this course. And, yeah, and then we'll go to the 6Ks and 5Ks, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking, scrolling through our projected ownership as well. A few of the guys we've talked about in this range. Connor's at about 13%, Reed at about 11. Noto just mentioned Harmon there. Nobody else kind of in the 7K range, really cracking double digits. Min Muli at 10. Adam Scott at 6. So interesting, fairly low ownership on him. But as we get down into the 6K range, you've got last week's runner-up. It could have been winner, Robert McIntyre at 6,800. And you'll notice that, like, right now, Bobby Mack is at like 90-1 to win. And a lot of the guys around him are in that like 300 to 400 to 1 range to win. I guess the Oosthuizen at 6,900 has, he's the closest in odds, but even he's still in the upper 100s. So I can't remember the last time we've had mega chalk at 6,800 on DraftKings, but here we are with Robert McIntyre, who probably would have been priced maybe $800 or $900 higher if pricing was set after last week's tournament ended. But I suppose he probably deserves his own discussion here because of that ownership. So, Noto, I'll stick with you. What are you doing with Bobby Mack?
I don't know just yet. I love the play at the price point, obviously, but I think in single entry and small field stuff, he'll probably be 30% owned, and that's mostly what I play outside of the Millie Makers. So I don't know what I'm going to do with him there. But if you just look at, you mentioned the outright number. I mean, he's the same as Tom Kim, who is 8,100. He's the same as Sam Burns, who's 8,500. He's got better odds than Justin Thomas, who's 8,600. So it's really hard to make a case against him. He always comes alive at this time of year, obviously coming off the good finish. He's 3 for 3 at the Open with 2 top 10s. So other than ownership, it's hard to find a reason not to like Robert McIntyre. I do like Jordan Smith right there at the same price point. I think he's interesting. I'll play a little bit of Louis. Interested to hear your guys' takes on Louis. I mean, he's been a major killer throughout his career other than the last couple of years, but he's finally showing a little bit of life over on Liv, a couple top 6 finishes in his last 3 starts. So any takers on Louis?
If I play him, he will probably withdraw, so you probably don't want me to play
I mean, he's going to
him,
withdraw either way,
yeah. Matt, your take on Louis or McIntyre?
Yeah, Louis is my favorite play in the upper sixes, and I'm going to be playing a lot of him. I'm not going to play any McIntyre. If he beats me, he beats me, but I have a rule: you don't play chalk in the 6Ks, and sometimes it beats you, and sometimes it doesn't. So whatever the result, I'll live with it. I'm not going to play him. I'm going to play Louis. I love Louis. He's been, if you look at him at this course and say this was in 2020, he'd probably be 8,700, right? Because it just feels like a perfect layout for him. And he's starting to come alive on Liv. His last few starts have been really good. I watched a lot of that last one when Cam won in London, and Louis was the guy kind of, right on his ass the entire tournament. So that recipe of fairways and greens and keeping the ball in play and keeping the ball in front of you, good putter. I like Louis a lot. Another guy I like that'll play over McIntyre is Brandon Grace, who has been one of the best players kind of on Liv since he's joined. He's fallen off slightly lately, but I still think at that price he's really cheap. And I think he's a good Open Championship player, so I'll be playing some of him too. And I like Smith as well.
Yeah, Jordan L. Smith is the guy I was going to mention there. 12th last week. Couldn't quite get enough putts to drop, but he had all 4 rounds under 70. Just a solid all-around performance. He's probably another option that's at least relatively safe for a made cut in this range. Maybe Bjork, who's another guy we talked about last week on the show, who is priced at 6,700. So there are some pivots here, and this is maybe more names than we talk about in the 6Ks a whole lot of weeks, and kind of goes along with that lower floor pricing on DraftKings that we've been talking about here throughout the show. So, Noto, I'll open it up at this point. Who else you want to talk about?
Yeah, you mentioned Bjork. I just wanted to hit on a couple of things with him. So if you look at the raw strokes gained off the tee, he's not very good, but he's actually 6th in driving accuracy on the DP World Tour and 2nd in strokes gained approach. So he's been playing some great golf. He's finished T42 or better in 18 straight events. So I think he's got a nice floor there at 6,700. He did end up being really popular last week, but I think McIntyre will help him be a little bit lower on this week. Torbjorn Olesen, he's been playing well. He's a guy that has some really good stats on the DB World Tour. Don't mind looking at him. Andrew Putnam's been really good on links courses. I'm not really sure why that's the case, but he's accurate off the tee. He's got a really good short game as well. And then moving down, is it Juice Loudon? He's been playing pretty well. 6,200 seems like a good price for him. He's top 50 in my model, coming off of 2 top 10s in his last 3 starts. And that'll do it for me until we get into the 5Ks.
I don't know why I didn't think about it till just now, but how about the PGA Tour suddenly just having the full shot tracker data for the and some people may not have even noticed this because they might have followed it on the Euro Tour, the DP World Tour site, but PGA Tour just bang full shot tracker for the Scottish Open last week, which was a little bit of a surprise, and obviously they won't have that this week, but the Open Championship website does promise full shot-by-shot data for every player. So we'll see what that brings. I can't remember whether they had that last year. No, you remember that? Or either
this is always the major that didn't have it. I'm not sure if I had it last year, but
I can't remember either. Maybe somebody watching will know, but it does have shot-by-shot view posted on the website. So we've come a long way with the shot tracker data, and that's a good thing. There's more sweat to be had. Like, this was always the tournament where you just had to wait, either hope they showed your guys' hole on the shots on the TV, or wait till it updates when the entire hole is complete, which seems like forever when you're trying to sweat a contest. So, Matt, any other golfers or thoughts you want to chat about here?
Yeah, low sixes. I love Henrik Stenson. I bet him at 500 to 1. I was informed there's 1,000 to 1 on Barstool if you have that book. So you can bet $1,000 to win $1 million. So I'm still considering that because I like him a lot this week. I think if you had vintage Stenson here, fairways and greens, he's great at that, keeping the ball in play. And he's been doing that on Live lately too. 2 of his last 3 starts, he's finished in the top 6. He was 5th in Tulsa. And then last time out in London, he finished T6, but he was 2nd in the field in fairways, and he was 3rd in greens and regulation. So he seems like he's back to that plodding, keeping the ball in play, former Open champion, great Open championship history. One of my favorite players of all time. So I'm going to be playing a lot of him at 6,200. I like his chance to make the cut. And I also bet a top 20 on him at 10 to 1 on FanDuel. You can probably find better somewhere, but I'm really, really high on Stenson this week.
Interesting. We'll see how that pays off. If you become a millionaire, then you got to thank us for the karma.
Yeah.
If you decide to do that, and you hit, we need a little tip for that. All right. Before we get out of here, and we've already been on for about 50 minutes, so we can probably skip the live draft this week, but we'll bring that back next week. I wanted to make sure I touched on this because I saw it yesterday, and I while he's here, I have to ask him, Noto, you got to reconcile a tweet that you made for me here.
Okay.
And I have no idea if you have an inkling where I'm going with this. I did not give him a heads up in advance, but you tweeted yesterday. I've never understood why some golfers don't look at leaderboards when in contention. Now, we've done shows long enough that I know that you are the type of person that does not look at leaderboards in DFS contests until they are complete. So you got to reconcile your tweet for me here with not looking at the leaderboards when they're in contention and you not checking your leaderboards when you're in contention.
Well, listen, once a lineup is locked, there's nothing I can do to change the outcome. Now, a golfer in contention, I just don't understand how you don't look at the leaderboard to see what you need to do. If you're in a basketball game, you're down 2 points. You want to know you're down 2 points. You can either, go for 2, go for 3 to take the lead, whatever it may be. You need to foul if you're down. Football, baseball, any other sport, you're looking at the leaderboard constantly. It makes no sense to me. I get, maybe you're not trying to make yourself nervous on the front 9 or whatever, but when you're on 16 and 17, at least look at the leaderboard. It makes no sense to me.
What generated this?
It was the Barbasol, and who was it that was in the lead?
Keith, whatever his name was.
Give me a sec.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Trevor Cohn. The announcers kept talking about Trevor Cohn, not because he had the lead, And then he, duck hooked one left, ended up making double, and he still wouldn't look at the leaderboard. And the announcers kept saying he was down 1 on the 18th hole, and they were like, I don't know if he knows he has to birdie this hole to get in the playoff or not. It's just like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, at that point, you kind of need to know. And yeah, like you said, there's nothing you can do about your DFS lineup. But I did have to have a chuckle at the tweet because I know you don't like looking. So I wanted to make you explain it on the air. So I figured that was why. But yeah, if you're on the last 3 holes, I think for strategy purposes, you gotta know. But I totally agree though. If guys don't want to do it for the first like 12 or 13 holes, if they're in contention, because it might mess with their head a little bit.
Yeah. I got to say, when you first started talking about a tweet you made at some point that I'm going to put you on the spot here, I was like, oh shit, it's definitely something I said at some point. So,
I've got to do a deeper dive. I'm sure I can find some gems.
Oh,
yeah,
you don't.
My mind was racing too.
Far. Yeah,
that's where I tweeted something on drinking a little too much.
No, nothing bad. Nothing bad. It's all good. But and I just I had a chuckle, so I wanted to bring it up. But yeah, we'll bring the snake draft back last week, or back next week, especially since I got the groove rolling again. I edged out Noto for second place last week, so we'll get that rolling. But don't want to keep our production team too late on a Monday evening, and we've already had a pretty robust show here for you tonight. So anything else? Matt, anything else you want to pass along before we call it a day here?
Well, we didn't get to the 5K, but I do like Travis Smythe, who I wrote a story on recently, who I'm really high on overall as a person and a player. He's great. It's his first Open Championship start. He's been over here for a couple of weeks practicing and getting ready, so I think he could be a sneaky top 20 look, kind of a grinder, good bad weather player. So I like Travis a lot this week. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, anything. I'm not trying to cut off the discussion. If there's something down at the lowest levels that you really do like, Noto, I know you mentioned, maybe a couple rosterable players towards the bottom. Is there anybody else that you haven't mentioned already that you at least want to give a head nod to?
Yeah, there's actually 5 guys that I'm going to be rostering in the 5Ks: Antoine Rosner, Jorge Campillo, Matthew Southgate, Richie Ramsey, and Marcel Siem. And then just to finish the show, I'll never forget Henrik Stenson, WGC Mexico, got the runs and withdrew in a non-cut event. So yeah, I'm not going to be playing Stenson just out of that from 8 years ago or whatever. He drank the water. He drank the tap water.
To add to your list, I'm going to be playing. Yeah, just one more guy in the 5s. I'm going to be playing Nakajima, who is really high, was a top amateur in the world for a while before turning pro. He's been playing really well on the Asian Tour. He won recently. I think he's finished in the top 5 in like 3 straight events. And he's really cheap for his ceiling and how well he could play. And then Alex Fitzpatrick at the dead minimum 5,500. He holed out from the bunker to get in at the Open. He's played pretty well on the Challenge Tour and the few starts that he's gotten on the DP World Tour. I don't see any reason why he can't make the cut at 5,500.
And we also talked about Ewan Ferguson last week, who finished with the top 15 finish. So he's T12 last week, T4 at the British Masters a couple weeks ago. So he is in that range as well at 6,100. So really interesting on, if we go back maybe a month, there wasn't hardly anybody we wanted to roster in the 6K range. And now, combined, we've probably rattled off 15 names at about 6,500 or less that are at least, you can stomach clicking them. And that makes a roster, if you want to do a Rory plus Scheffler build, which you won't be the only one doing it if you decide to do that, but it is doable when you see, you click Rory and Scheffler in a lineup and you see 6,400 per player remaining. Well, I can't do that. Well, with a couple of golfers that you might at least be able to consider in the 5Ks this week, then, it does become a little bit more doable than it would have been with the old pricing. So just food for thought as you go building out your lineups this week. Take another quick peek here at the chat here. Let's see. Sable in the Discord chat says always good to have Patrick Reed back in our lives. So it'll be interesting to see how many people end up playing him this week. Mr. Gerg hasn't seen a single shot on the Live Tour. I haven't seen too many either, but have at least kept some tabs on the results. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out as the next season ends up starting with this new agreement among the tours. So, all right, I think that will wrap us up for this week. Thanks to Noto. Thanks to Matt for joining me as usual. I am Justin. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes for us as well. We hope you all have a great week. Enjoy the Open Championship, everybody, and we will catch you back here next week. Take care.